Waltrip in second, but it's going to be Dale Earnhardt Jr. using lessons learned from his father to go from 6th to 1st and score the victory in the Pepsi 400.
That's unbelievable.
Yes!
That man behind you did it for you.
Yes!
You guys celebrate.
Yeah, so basically I came into contact with you because my friend Christian, his dad's Andy, and he told me, like, I'm kind of chasing the same career you did, and I just wanted to get a chance to speak to you because he came with the opportunity. I was like, yeah, okay, like I'm not gonna hold my head on it waiting for it. And he got back to me a couple months later, which was like around Christmas, and he told me you were willing to talk to me, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, like since I was in 7th grade, my dream job is to be a sports broadcaster, analyst, and I've never stopped chasing it. First, I just got my degree. It's been really hard to get a job, but besides the fact of me, I just wanted to learn more about like really how you got your foot in the door, and how you never gave up and stuff like that. Because I know you were like go from ESPN in 2017. Like how did you deal with that? Like how did you possibly stay like optimistic?
I would say understanding that that's the business.
Mhm.
And it's not the first time I've been fired. And if you study history, I'm far from the last. I'm far from the first and far from the last, and I was far from alone in that. There were 150 of us that day alone. That
I remember that time. Yeah.
That were under contract and thought we were all good for a long time, and they
Yeah.
pulled this financial maneuver where they were able to, it's one of those weird accounting things that none of us understands. But yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, it's you have to embrace the ups and downs of the business, and you have to embrace the rarity and uniqueness of what it is. So since I was 16 years old, basically, with few exceptions, I've done this for a living.
Mhm.
I've paid my bills by, being at a racetrack or being at an arena or, speaking into a microphone in some fashion. And while it's disappointing at that moment, you have to stop and embrace the fact that, hey, wait a minute. If you'd have grabbed me when I was 25 years old and said, okay, you're going to go to Wimbledon and you're going to go do college football at LSU and you're going to do the Indy 500 and you're going to do, but it's all going to stop on this date, my answer would have been, oh, sign me up. Terrific.
Yeah.
So you just have to understand that that's part of the business, and always has been, always will be. When I got certain opportunities, they came at the expense of someone else. And it's just part of it that you have to understand going in. Everybody wants to do this, right? Everybody wants to do this.
Dream job.
And in this day and age, everybody can do this with these things and computers, and everybody's a content creator. So you have to understand it's competitive and it's challenging, and it's the opportunities are hard to get, and you have to make the most of them when you get them.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like I know you nearly gave up on your broadcasting career, if that's correct, right? You became a MRN commentator, and you start off like, didn't you get introduced just selling MRNM, like advertising, and then they were short of pit reporters, and you came in, and that's kind of how everything changed for you.
That's mostly it. Yeah, I actually had gone to work for a company in Washington, D.C. off the air, because I didn't think I was good enough to get where I wanted to go. And it was an opportunity at what was then a very big radio network, and so on. And from there, I got the job at MRN, and it didn't involve anything to do with announcing when I went to work for them. But that's that's how things work sometimes. You put yourself in positions to meet people or um, to make connections, and you never know where they might lead. You make the
Mhm.
best decision you think of at the time, and sometimes it works out that way, and sometimes it doesn't. At the time, I didn't think I was good enough, and fortunately, circumstances came around to give me a chance to prove myself wrong.
Mhm. Um, and I know another like step you took forward was there was an opening for school of motorsports a report at Dover Speedway in New Jersey, right? And that's when you moved there with your family, kind of unexpectedly, and you took the interview there and moved there.
Yeah, that actually was done by a little small production company in New Jersey,
Hmm.
in a little burg called Farmingdale, New Jersey, and um, and yeah, I knew some of the people that worked there and ran it, and one of their guys took a job at Dover Speedway, and so they had an opening in New Jersey, and I applied for it and took it. So there's there's always um, there's always things you're going to hear about if you're working your network. Um, and each time you see one of those decisions, you have to decide, is that a step up, a step sideways, a step back, is it a step closer to what I want to do, and you make a judgment. um it My experience there was an interesting one. I mean, I got to go to Daytona for the first time, uh, to the 500, and I got to travel around to a lot of different little racetracks and a couple of big ones. And it's you get exposed to new people, how the higher levels of the game work, and it all feeds the knowledge machine
Hmm.
that they call experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, um, at the time, right? Like when you were thinking about giving up, like, did it just come out of nowhere, that opportunity, and it was kind of like a blessing, or like what really happened with that?
Sure. Basically, things that happened earlier in life came together with the present. So earlier, I took a job at a radio station in Norwich, Connecticut.
Yep.
I was working part time at a radio station in Providence, um, but a full time job came available in Connecticut. And one of their advertisers was Stafford Speedway. And um, I got to go do some things at the Speedway because I was a racing fan and knew something about it, and none of the other people that were on the air at the radio station did. And the people that ran Stafford, eventually the public relations guy at that time, ended up moving down to Daytona and going to work at MRN. And he was at the National Association of Broadcasters Radio Convention in Dallas, Texas, September of '85. And I was there for the company in Washington, D.C. I was working for. So this is 4 years, 5 years later from when I had met him at Stafford. And we ran across each other at this radio convention. And a few months later, he called me and said he had a job that was going to be coming open, and did I want to interview for it? Okay,
You just
sure I do. Be happy to. And maybe another 3 or 4 months went by, and I went and interviewed for it, and got offered the job and took the job in April of '86. But that came about because of stuff in Eastern Connecticut in the early 1980s that where I made connections with people, and that came back later on a completely random moment.
Mhm. And do you feel like the brutal truth is like, not everybody's gonna make it. It doesn't matter how hard you work. Like some people are just, are just gonna get luckier than others, no matter how hard you work. Or
There's a little bit of everything that goes into the sauce, right? You got to work at your craft. You got to get reps. You got to work at getting better. Um, you gotta find people who can help you get better. Part of it is competition. You know, all of these jobs are very competitive. There's 100 people would like to go be an announcer for MRN tomorrow. 100. And there's also, 12, 15 guys that have been there for a long time that aren't ready to give it up and do a nice job. And they've earned those spots. So it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of working at your craft, being good, making connections with people and building a network of people in areas where you want to go, and then a little bit of luck too.
Yeah, so it just everything kind of goes into the sauce, like you said.
I could never, ever, ever have predicted from Coventry, Rhode Island,
Yeah.
to the places that I've been and the people that I've met and the events I've gotten to witness and be part of, from starting out at, WCDY at Coventry High School for a couple hours a day after school. And could never have put that all together and just said, this is the way it's going to happen. So yeah. Now, another part of that is you got to be willing to take a chance. So I moved a lot. I mean, a lot, in the younger part of my career. Now, every time I moved, I believed that to be a step up the ladder. And, it wasn't always easy. I wasn't making a lot of money. But I was willing when someone said, hey, would you? The answer was always yes. And then I figured out how to make it work. There are practical considerations that come to bear. I mean, I'll just give you an example. At one point, I was asked if I well, I'll use MRN as an example. I had a wife and a child at that point, and they asked me if I wanted to move to Daytona Beach, Florida, which was going to be about 1,200 miles away from any family, to help my then wife, with that young child. But we made the decision that yes, that was the right thing to do, and did it. And there were times it wasn't easy, with basically no help and me traveling, 40 weekends a year and all the rest. I get that. It wasn't easy, but we did it. And it was the right thing to do for the big picture. But, the being willing to bet on yourself and take some chances is a part of it. If you just want to be, if I had just, if my goal in life was to be the best sportscaster in Rhode Island, that's a small pocket, right? 3 TV stations and a few radio stations, and that's it. It's a small pocket. So, being willing to pick up and go to strange places and do new things, opens the field of opportunities a lot more.
Mm-hmm. And you just you feel like in order to be successful, you have to, you obviously go outside your comfort zone, but gamble on yourself, and that comes in terms of traveling and taking job opportunities you might not even like they might pay the bills and stuff, but you might not, end up enjoying them after the move and stuff.
Well, I mean, if you ask me to pack up and move to San Francisco, I'm going to need to know that it's a decent job, that's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's a bigger world than just right at your front doorstep, right? My goal when I started out on this, I wanted to get to New York City. I wanted to be on one of the big network radio stations in New York City, WNBC, WCBS, WABC. That was my goal for my life, was to be on one of those radio stations. That was the big time. That was I'd be living my dream. I never worked for any of those radio stations. Instead, I worked for the TV networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. Okay, it turned out a little different, but that was my goal. And I was willing to go to New York City to do that. Now, New York's expensive as all get out.
Yeah, for sure.
Just finding an apartment, finding a place to live is crazy. And New York's all, competitive as all get out. So, just being open-minded. What's an opportunity? Well, maybe an opportunity is being behind the camera instead of in front of it. Or, there's a guy I met a guy yesterday who is working as a pit reporter for a racing series. He said, this is the first on-camera job I've ever had. He said, I was the cameraman. And one day the announcer didn't show up and they said, here, take this microphone, you do it. We'll get somebody else to hold the camera.
Boom.
He's like, what do I do? They said, you'll figure it out. So you just never know.
Yeah, it's like, it's very similar for me too. Like, I grew up my entire life in the same house as I am in right now, Somerset, Massachusetts, small town. I always had dreams of being on ESPN specifically since I was in 7th grade. I didn't start getting like any kind of like part-time experience until like college. I wrote for Framingham State newspaper for sports. I did interviews and stuff. I color commentate Somerset hockey and football right now. So I'm starting to find just random but newer opportunities that I'm not necessarily used to. Like, I never really had on camera experience until I started color commentating. And then I started a YouTube last summer. And I've been just trying to dip my foot in a bunch of different waters just to see, if I can help improve my resume and just like my knowledge of everything, like not just sports, like general journalism and news reporting and stuff. And I've gotten to this point where I envision to like, once I graduate college and I get that bachelor's degree, like that's where I'm really going to take off. But now unexpectedly, in this job market, I'm almost a year graduated and I've really been struggling finding a job, applied to over 500 jobs. And I'm just kind of chipping, doing the part-time experience still. So yeah, basically like my question is like, not only how did you get your foot in the door, but how did you just keep taking that step up, just finding these people and like, did you go anywhere specifically to connect with these people and make new like friends and coworkers and stuff? Or
the framework within that question has to be this: the world is different now. Okay, so in that period of time, cable TV didn't exist, streaming didn't exist. You went to a radio station before you went to television.
Mhm.
And you started at a small radio station and hoped to earn your way to a bigger station and a bigger station and a bigger station. So I didn't start in Providence. I started in West Warwick at a little small radio station where I worked part-time on the weekends for minimum wage while I was working at a grocery store,
Mhm.
packing the dairy case to actually put some money in my pocket.
Mhm.
The radio business isn't what it was. It doesn't really, hell, I don't know if the radio stations in Fall River even exist anymore. WSAR right there off of 195 was one of the places that a friend of mine worked.
I reached out to them too.
And I don't even know if it still exists anymore. If any humans actually work there, or if it's all just programming that's fed in from someplace else. You go to that building on Wampanoag Trail in East Providence. That used to be 2 radio stations, WPRO and Pro FM.
Yep.
Now there's like 8 of them there. And 6 of the 8 are just basically a computer terminal sitting on a shelf. There's no humans that actually have anything to do with it.
Mhm.
So it's changed. On the other side, this is it's not only an opportunity to get reps, but it's how most things are being done now. If you went to Channel 10 years ago and they sent you out to cover, a Patriots game, you would have yourself, a camera person, probably a producer, maybe an audio person with you. Now, if you are the sports reporter, you're carrying the camera yourself, shooting the shots, holding the microphone out, get the interview, or you're shooting it, setting this on a tripod.
Yeah.
Shooting your own stand-ups, editing on your phone and emailing it in to be put on television that way. So, that's what the business is now. So you have an opportunity that didn't exist before, where before, if you wanted to get reps and work on your craft, you had to find one of those radio jobs somewhere. Now you can do it. You can sit in front of a television and tape yourself calling a Bruins game or something, and just go back and listen to it and watch it, see what it sounds like and what you liked and what you didn't like. And, you can, you're doing these things. I assume that, the Somerset hockey is a streaming thing, right?
And tape delay.
Yeah. Well, you can go back and watch the tape. What'd you like? What didn't you like? And you don't have to beat yourself up, but you should be a firm critic, and you should apply that same filter when you're watching other things. When you're watching the Bruins or something, watch it with a more critical eye. Why did he just say that? Or what's working here? What didn't? What's he doing that I need to be able to understand so I can apply it to my work?
Mm-hmm.
There are opportunities to get reps. Unfortunately, they don't pay anything right now. But the most valuable thing you can do is work on your presentation and continue to get reps and hone those skills, because that's what it takes. You always have to be trying to get better. I am still trying to get better at 64 years old. Haven't been doing this since I was 16. I'm still trying to get better, and the world around me has changed, and I always have to be on top of that and adapt to it. And I hate social media. I think social media is the God most evilest thing ever. But you know what? It's sure a hell of a way to promote yourself. Make somebody notice you.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell you that working on getting that opportunity is going to pay you much money, but I can tell you that the opportunity's there, and you have to dig into it if it's going to kick in somewhere. People want to see your work. First thing they'll do when you apply for a job is they'll look at your social media. That's the first thing. And I hate that, but it is. That's the first thing they look at. First, they want to see if you're putting anything dumb out there, but or politically volatile, I'll call it. But then they want to see, what's he look like? What's he sound like? What does he post?
Mm-hmm. And that was like for me, I started doing podcasts at first, and they weren't really, I feel like a young kid like automatically expects like a ton of traction on their content, like, on their first video. And like, I would get like some views, like 60, 70, 80. And then I was like, let me try some sports documentaries. And, I really didn't have any film making or video editing experience. I kind of just taught myself at the level I'm at now. And I started creating like these documentaries that would take me, each one would take me hundreds, like over 100 hours to edit. And I put them out, and they started getting like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 views, positive feedback about, like brain trauma in sports. And like, I did one on Mikko Rantanen on iMovie. That was the first one I made, and it did pretty good. It had like 3,000 views for a kid that like, barely had any videos, only a couple of podcasts. So again, I just been trying to dip my toe in as many things as I can possible, trying to get out of my comfort zone. Like when I started color commentating a year ago, my friend who's a vet, I guess you could say, at play-by-play. He's been doing this for years. He told me the first thing, like, don't be afraid of silence. Like, don't feel like you have to, make up words like when there's silence just to not make it uncomfortable. And like I always followed that. And then you had an even better quote that I read, and you said the fewer words I have, the more impact the words that I say do have. And that's kind of, I feel like that's similar, but like I try to, like, when I'm on air, I try to just remember stuff like that because I'm still uncomfortable a little bit. Like I've only commentated, like color commentated, probably 10 to 15 games, and each one I feel like I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. But what, football and hockey, they're two completely different sports. So hockey's fast paced. It was harder for me to like just jump on the mic and get in front of a camera. And I just started getting better and better. And that's how I started my sports documentaries on YouTube. And I don't know, I was just thinking of maybe possibly posting shorter form content because obviously people's attention spans are so short nowadays. I was thinking about posting like weekly content that wouldn't be as much time consuming to maybe like, improve my work and my resume and stuff. Like, I don't know. Right now, I'm just so focused on like improving my resume to I asked myself, like, what do I possibly have to do, like, as a young kid right out of college to get like the respect of the employers? You know what I mean? Because like I've gone in person to WPRI and they said I needed an appointment. I spoke to ABC6 in Providence and they said they would reach out to me eventually, and they were impressed with my effort walking in, dressing nice and stuff. But like, what did you do like when you were like a kid? Did you like, when you I assume you graduated college, right? Obviously.
Nope.
No? Oh,
No
well,
college degree.
when you walked around, did you have like printed examples of your work or like film reels or something that you were giving people to like get your name out there? Or?
So again, times were different, right? But they're different, but they're not today. So you got to have a reel of your work, right? And because that's what everybody wants to see. They want to see your work. They want to, and it doesn't have to be 20 hours, 20 minutes, 5 minutes tops of your work. In those days, that was very painstaking to edit, reel to reel tape with a razor blade, and there are places I cold sent my tape to. There are places where you find different resources of jobs that are available, where I applied specifically for jobs. Send your resume and reel to such and such. What some of those are today. There's a website called STAA, which is a sportscaster's. It's kind of started by a guy who's turned himself into an agent, just trying to find a way to conglomerate, not conglomerate's the word, but to pull together a classified ads situation, if you will, for jobs that are available, or that are changing. There's things like the Sports Media Association, which is out of North Carolina, but they keep track of jobs and they do a lot of work with young people and internships and meetings, mentorships. How you build your connections, your group of people. Understanding the business also. I'll use Channel 6 as an example. Look, they just laid people off in their sports department. including the guy that was the head of the sports department, because they're
Oh, wow.
combining channels, ABC 6's operation with who's that merger that's it might be Channel 12's. And literally, they just laid Nick Coit off and some other people. News anchors, so on. Yeah, we're cutting back the number of people. So the number of jobs in that area is getting fewer
Mhm.
because the linear television business is not doing as well as it did, and so they're I mean, the news thing. Probably if I went back to Rhode Island and turned on the news, I wouldn't recognize hardly any of the people there except a couple, because so many have turned over, been cut back. It's a shrinking business, that side of it. So where's the content coming from? Well, people doing their own things on social media, people doing things that are getting them attention elsewhere. The podcast thing, you got to aggregate a pretty good audience to make some money at it. But it's a good way to get reps.
Mhm.
So, there's an entire group in North Carolina that produces almost all of the college sports broadcasts in America. And I met the guy that runs it a few years ago, and I was in North Carolina for something, and he said, "Yeah, come on over. We'll show you our facility. The facility's impressive, really impressive." And then he said, "Yeah, so on a typical Saturday afternoon, football or basketball season, we got like 90 people in here. Got 90 different radio broadcasts going at the same time. UConn basketball goes back through this facility in Winston-Salem. Michigan basketball or football, or everything goes back through this facility in North Carolina. And we got these cubicles where all these guys are sitting there doing the halftime show and running the broadcasts." And he said, "And you know what? Most all of these people have another job during the week." He said, "That one's a barista. That one works at the dealership down the street. That one," he said, that's the state of the business. He said, "Yeah, this guy's doing the halftime on Michigan football, and it's a part-time job for him."
That's insane.
Okay. So broadening out your understanding of the business, and working on getting reps, creating your own reps is a great thing. Check out some of those resources for where the different job pools are, and don't be afraid. There's a kid that's say a kid, he's probably in his 40s now, but when he was in college at Ball State in Indiana, he worked as a runner for ESPN during the Indy 500. So get here at 5:00 in the morning, go fill these coolers up with water, go do this, grab this golf cart, drive this one here, and now he's a production manager, and he runs College Game Day. It's not on the air, but setting that stuff up every week and all of the people it takes to do it and all the different logistics and all, he's in charge. And he's got a vice president's title, and he's got a corner office in Connecticut, and he's got a big job, because he filled up coolers with water and got on a golf cart and drove this one here or there. And that led to, hey, we need somebody, it doesn't pay a lot, but it does pay. Can you want to do this for football season for us? And that led to something else and something else and something else. And, hey, we got a staff job open. Want to interview for it? So, and it wasn't what he set out to do, but it sure turned out well. He set out to be on air. Now he's a vice president, so just be open-minded about it takes a lot more people behind the camera to put on a television show than it does in front of the camera. There's only one job in front of the camera at a time. Our Indy 500 broadcast, we had 178 people on the grounds. 10 of them were actually on the air. The other 168 were putting on the show. And so there's all kind of different options and opportunities out there, but work on your reps all you can. But don't be afraid to think about, in a broader context, other areas of the business also, because like I said, the business is consolidating. It's not growing. It's consolidating. And, it's very much, it's changing very, very rapidly as this becomes the driving force in everything.
Yeah, I also hate social media too. I never really like post a lot, but yeah, I've gotten rid of like Facebook and Twitter, well, X or whatever you want to call it now. But I've always contemplated getting rid of Instagram because I'm like, that's one of the main apps I could use to promote myself, and that's where I try to promote myself, even if it, right now, like obviously I'm not like a verified account that has hundreds of thousands and millions of followers, but it can possibly get to that point if I keep it, but like, it's like, I go back and forth in my head with that sometimes about like, you see kids, non-sports related, that are like streamers now that are making an unfathomable amount of money, that are literally like teenagers, like not even graduated high school and stuff like that. So like, in the digital age, like especially now, like I understand it's a crazy time, but I also tell myself, like, why not me? Like, why can't I, like somebody like you said you were from a small town in Rhode Island, and then you didn't expect everything to turn out how it turned out, but you ended up being extremely successful, still are. But like, honestly, how many times, like throughout your career and your life, did you like have that voice in the back of your head where you're like, is this for me? Maybe I should move on to something else, more like a normal 9 to 5 job or something like that, something with more guaranteed money. Like, did you ever have those thoughts?
Once I took the job in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And and this all came back around the other way to me. So you don't know, you make the right decision. Sometimes there's things you have to do. Like I said, I had a wife and a young child then. I had to find a way to support them and take the sales end of things. There were many, many more opportunities than the on air, the behind the scenes end of it. So, okay. Well, I did take that step. And, since the world came back around the other way to me, no, I haven't, nor have I had to. But it could have gone the other way decades ago. I can make a whole list of people for you that I used to work with that aren't in the business anymore. One's selling insurance, one's driving a school bus, one, I can make lists of people that aren't in the business anymore. For every job that you want to get, there's somebody that has that job that wants to keep it. And like I said, just in the Providence television market alone, there's some people that have worked in the business for a long time that are on the street right now, trying to figure out what they're going to do next. So, it's a tough business, and like I said, it's there's never been more opportunity to create content, but it's really hard to create content that stands out enough to attract an audience you can monetize. I'm not I'm not the biggest expert at that because I'm very much not a look at me kind of person. And so I don't understand a lot of that. People being famous just for being famous and, you know, spewing opinions about everything. Just, well, okay, there seems to be a market for that. Good for them for figuring that out. But that's not me. I'm not interested in doing that. But like I said, there's never been more opportunity to create content, but it's never been more challenging to monetize it and get a toehold in the business. It's really hard. I mean, you said you went to Framingham State?
Yeah, I went to there. I went to Nichols College, and I graduated from UMass Dartmouth, so I moved around a lot.
Okay. So, each one of those places hasn't stopped teaching the stuff that you studied there, and they're
Mhm.
turning out people every semester looking for jobs.
Mhm.
So it's hard. I make no bones about it. I don't know if it's ever been harder to get a toehold in the business, but there's also never been more opportunity to practice your craft and put it out there for the world to consume. Like I said, if you didn't own a radio station before, yeah, if you didn't own a radio station or get a job at one, you had no chance. Well, that's not a factor anymore.
Mhm.
But then those jobs that paid decent money at radio stations don't exist anymore either.
Mhm.
The guy doing Michigan football's halftime show is working as a barista, you know. So
I would have never guessed that.
it just is what it is. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yep, it's hard. But I take all the opportunities you can, the Somerset stuff. That's great. That's reps, you know. Uh somebody somebody doing ESPN Plus, all these ESPN Plus things are produced by the schools. So, like all the Brown University stuff, Brown has to produce those telecasts. And there are students that work on them, but there are people they pay to work on them too. All of those kinds of things um, are opportunities that didn't exist. Nobody televised Brown hockey before. Well, now they have to produce a telecast of every one of those games. Um, but it doesn't pay a lot, and it's hard. They've got people that want to do the on air stuff. Okay, what about the rest of it? Who's running the cameras, who's doing audio, who's you know, um, there's a lot of production opportunity out there, but again, it's you gotta make connections, you gotta chase it, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But that stuff can all lead someplace. Okay, I'm doing this high school hockey. You ever need anybody to do your Brown stuff? I'm around, you know. Um, and I don't know who's in charge there anymore. The guy that I used to know that was in charge there left and went to Temple
Mhm.
to set up their department down there in Philadelphia. But it's so don't plan on finding jobs that are going to set you up for a full-time deal anytime soon. But keep working at it because if you're not working at the craft and putting it out there, you got no chance. And look, think in terms of a lot of these digital products that are out there. Um, UMass Dartmouth, do they do telecasts of sporting events?
Yeah, my friend does it. Yeah.
I mean, what else they got? They need some help
Mhm.
with something. They need, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that gets people noticed by a Nesson or um, or one of those kind of things. And maybe on one of their Nesson Plus things. I mean, look, I know a guy, he does over 100 events a year between ESPN Plus and Yukon Plus, and he does over 100 events a year. Now, those 100 events all added up, he still has another job. But he does 100 events a year, knocking his reps out. He's a young guy. So, you never know where it ends up.
Yeah. Makes sense. And sorry, I don't want to take too much of your time. I just had one last question. Like I know you commentated like the Notre Dame Michigan hockey game for the college playoffs and stuff like that, and you did like it wasn't just racing. You did so many things. Like I remember you said you started off like as a kid as a disc jockey, and you were doing some baseball and football games and stuff. And like, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but like, do you feel like to get to the point you are now, it was really just connections and taking chances, like relocating? That's something I personally been thinking about for a while now. And like, eventually I'm going to have to take that chance and not stay in the New England area for the rest of my life. Like something you did, you gambled on yourself. And yeah, like how important do you think is that factor when it comes to like relocation and stuff? Like, do you really feel like you have to move away from home to be successful?
No, not necessarily. But,
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot more jobs out there that aren't in that little geographic area. Finding a way to tap into the work that's available. Be it in New England, be it in Boston, be it, Springfield, or someplace else. There's a lot more jobs than just in that little, 2-3 state area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's really hard to say this is what you got to do.
Yeah, because everyone's path's different.
It's all different. Everybody's path is different, and and the world is changing fast. So, networking with people, finding people that are, again, who the UMass Dartmouth thing I use as an example. Somebody's in charge of that stuff. Who is
Mm-hmm.
it? What other places around there are there that are doing things like that? And even if it's taken a small piece of it, it's all building your network of people. They all have a list. They have a call list. I can almost tell you with 95% certainty when I go to certain cities in the country who some of the people are that are going to show up on the television crew. They're local there, but they're on the list.
Mm-hmm.
They're known to the networks because they worked for them before, or somebody else connected them into working for them, or and finding those people, building those connections, as well as working on your reps, is the most valuable thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Finding those people, even if it's, like I said, even if somebody says to you, keep stats for tonight, do it. You got to know how to do that when you're doing.
And you don't know what that will lead to.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's guys that make their living by being statisticians. They travel all over the country doing NFL games every week, and then do basketball games, and then do, and it's while they're doing that, they've made connections with the people in the business. Somebody's hiring those people, right?
Yeah.
Every time we went to Seton Hall or St. John's, the same guy did stats based out of New York City. And apparently he does a lot of the Knicks games and does, some of the other, He's on somebody's call list. Okay. That's how he makes his living. So any opportunity like that to be in the arena, to be part of the team that's producing the broadcast, even if it's not doing the job you want to do, is an opportunity to meet people and get on somebody's list. And, you know, you never know where that list takes you. The person that was doing the hiring at UMass Dartmouth all of a sudden is doing the hiring at Temple, you know, and a full-time job comes up and they're looking for somebody. Yeah, okay. I don't know anything about Philadelphia, but sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, so just be open-minded, keep digging, you know. Understand that the business is changing and you know, you gotta adapt with it and adapt your hopes and dreams to what the business is, you know. And again, there's no clear set path anymore. It's not go get a job at a radio station and then that'll lead to, no, that's not it anymore. So it's a very competitive, crowded field. But
just take your chances.
yeah, it can happen. You know, it can happen. And might lead to who knows, you might be a vice president someday. Sitting there at 40 years old, looking back saying, I'll be damned. Dude told me one time 20 years ago that I might be a vice president one day. Look at this. Who was that old fart anyway?
Yeah. I never guessed it too.
So,
well, yeah.
You know, who knows?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, this is a much different advice that I've gotten from anybody else, especially somebody that's in your position. I haven't really spoken to anybody one-on-one that has, you know, the resume you have and the experience you have. A lot of people I'm around are just like, you know, kids that are recently graduated or teachers, you know, like my friend John, he's been commentating for, I think, like play-by-play, like 7 years. He's commentated Endicott, UMass Dartmouth sports, a bunch of different things. And, you know, he just kept getting opportunities from, you know, from the first job he started, and then this would happen, and this would happen. So, and he teaches, like, you know, he's getting paid a little bit of money, and he hopes to do it full time, but, you know, he just teaches right now. So, yeah, I mean, everything you've told me, in this meeting is like, it's really helped a lot. And I just appreciate that you took the time out of your day to speak to a kid like me, you know, like I haven't really done much for myself yet. Like, and I've just been dreaming like that, you know, one day I'm going to say, wow, I can't believe like I'm here. And, you know, I'll have that thought in the back of my head, like, you know, what if I don't make it? What if I have to get a job that, you know, everybody else does, like, you know, work construction, like 12 hours a day or something like that. But, cause to be honest, like the last 4 years of my life, I dedicated to school and boxing, and it felt like, I hate to say it, but right now it feels like those 4 years of my education was kind of like a waste. And I know that's not going to stay like that, but I don't know. That's just like, I don't regret going to college, but for the amount of money that the experience costed, you know, it's kind of, it's difficult to deal with right now, since, you know, I have my degree and I thought that was going to be like the key I needed to at least like start off, you know, $40K a year job or even an internship. I have one internship and I haven't really been able to get other opportunities I've applied for. But yeah, I'm just trying to stay optimistic, and I'm going to continue to follow what you said. And again, I thank you. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Competitive world. You know, the only thing I'll say about the college degree is anymore, most jobs you'll apply for, you have to apply through a computer. And if you don't have the degree, they won't let you through the door. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way that the world, you know, you can't do what I've done without a college degree anymore. I can't teach a college course on sports broadcasting because I don't have a college degree.
Yeah.
Which is like the dumbest thing ever, but okay, you know, it's what it is. So, so good. All right. Well, good luck. Don't be afraid to reach out. You got my email address. That's usually the safest way to find me when I'm running around different places. If I don't answer you for a little bit, don't get unwound because
Yeah, no, I understand.
you know it priority orders stack up in a given day, and
Oh, I
let
understand.
me
for
know.
sure, yeah.
Keep digging.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Alan. Nice to meet
Yes,
you
sir.
too.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Take
All right,
care.
see
Thank
ya.
you too.
All right. Bye.
Look at him sliding off the corner. Half a lap to go. There is lap traffic ahead. We've had fantastic finishes in Atlanta. Will this be another side-by-side run to the checkers? It's going to be a sideways run to the checkers. Johnson tries to get there, can't get it done. Career win number 85. Jeff Gordon third on NASCAR's all-time win list. Wow.